hat off for a while. Thank you all very much. We'll get started. As everybody's ready, we all here? We waiting for Nadine? Oh, there you are, Nadine. Okay. Mohsen. Okay. Thank you all for coming. We are here, all of us. It's, of course, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Durbin, Mohsen Mahdawi, and Nadine Farid Johnson, the policy director of the Knight First Amendment, to speak about the Land of the Free Act that is being co-sponsored by the three of us here and Alex Padilla. This law is necessary because of what is going on in our State Department. Mohsen Mahdawi is a Vermonter, green card holder, was going through the normal process for citizenship, was invited to his last hearing at a federal facility in Colchester, Vermont. He went there, and as was expected, instead of getting the next step towards citizenship, he's been here 10 years, he got arrested and did not go home. He went to jail. And I visited him at the Northwest Correctional Facility. And the reason he was jailed is because the Secretary of State invoked a provision in the law that allows the arbitrary action by the Secretary of State to have a person arrested and deported because the Secretary does not approve of the speech that Mr. Mahdawi or any other legal resident uses. And of course, Mr. Mahdawi was at Columbia. He was protesting peacefully. He was working for peace, both for Palestinians and also for Israeli Jews. Everything he did was peaceful. His criticism of the war is very similar to comments that Senator Van Hollen has made, Senator Durbin has made, and that I have made. So we are in a situation where with this law, the Immigration and Naturalization Act, and a provision in it that gives this arbitrary authority to one individual, the Secretary of State, for himself to determine whether that speech is suitable or not, even though that speech is what is being said by millions of citizens of this country. And what we know historically in our own country is that we have to defend the First Amendment, the right of free speech, especially in times of conflict, especially in times of conflict. So we all support this law, and this will be in the Judiciary Committee that our leader, Senator Durbin, is going to promote. And I just want to thank Mohsen. I want to thank the Knight Foundation for the incredible work and its commitment to the First Amendment. Americans should never take for granted how precarious our rights are, and at the most difficult times is when we have to stand up and be the most assertive to protect the rights of all citizens to speak. So thank you very much for being here. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Senator Van Hollen, who has done incredible work on this, standing up for the rights of legal residents with the work that you did, and you can speak about that. But thank you, Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Well, I want to start by thanking Peter Welch, Senator Welch, for introducing this important legislation, to Senator Durbin and Senator Padilla for joining us, and to Mohsen, thank you for being an example to others about speaking out and being courageous and being undaunted, because the First Amendment is designed to make sure that the government cannot squelch free speech. And to the Knight Ridder Foundation, thank you for all you're doing as well, Nadine. So Mohsen is one of a number of students who were arrested and locked up by the Trump administration simply for expressing their views. They were expressing their views about the devastation in Gaza, the humanitarian disaster in Gaza, expressing their views about American complicity in the devastation of Gaza. And for that, they were targeted by the Trump administration and locked up. And the legal device that Secretary Rubio used in many of these cases, including Mohsen's case, was this provision that was put into our laws back in the 1950s as part of what was then known the McCarran-Walter Act during the essential Red Scare. And these were laws that were put in place to try to prevent people from speaking out back then. And I just want to read a short passage about what a U.S. federal judge found about these cases, about how the Trump administration has abused this provision of law, which I believe is constitutional and certainly should be stricken from the books. So this is what Judge William Young said. He was a Reagan-appointed federal judge, and he said it with respect to a number of these cases. He found that Secretary Rubio and then Secretary Noem had misused their powers to target individuals, quote, primarily on account of their First Amendment protected political speech. Then he went on to say it was designed to, quote, strike fear in others. In other words, what they wanted to do was literally lock up these students in order to silence others, to use government power to punish speech, which of course is a direct violation of our First Amendment rights. And what adds a little insult to injury here is that it was around the same time that Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio were off at the Munich conference and other places in Europe lecturing our European colleagues about how they were not allowing free speech. If you listen to what they said at the Munich conference, they went after the Europeans for squelching free speech. At the same time, they were locking up students here for exercising their free speech. So the hypocrisy is rich, but the goal is clear. The goal is to try to silence people, to try to silence students as we speak on these college campuses. And so that's why it's so important that Mohsen and other students and all of us, senators, say to the administration or to college administrators who may be cowed into going along with what the Trump administration is doing, that we are going to speak out. We're going to speak out loud and clear and make it very plain that we are not scared and that nobody should be scared for exercising their First Amendment rights. People can agree or disagree with the content of that speech. That, of course, is everybody's right. But what is not allowed is for the government to use its power to shut people up. And I'll just end with this. It was in a hearing here on Capitol Hill at the end of the Red Scare in the McCarthy era, where a brave witness said back to Senator McCarthy, "Have you no decency, sir?" And I ask the same thing of people like Secretary Rubio and the Trump administration. Have you no decency to literally lock up students for expressing their views and for using their First Amendment rights? And so it's really important that we get this, what I, again, think is an unconstitutional relic, out of the law, but we should do it. We should get rid of it once and for all. And I want to thank Senator Welch for doing that, introducing the legislation. I'm proud to join him. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, somebody who's never been scared to speak up, and that is Senator Durbin. Thank you.
I want to thank Senator Welch and Senator Van Hollen for bringing us together. Thank the Knight Institute for their leadership. Thank Mr. Mahdawi for his courage. Before this press conference started, I was speaking to one of the cameramen here who said he's going to put my statement that I make here on the television stations of Illinois, which I am glad to hear. But it called to mind just one basic question. How would you explain to the people you represent who are conservative and not very political why you're here today? Why are you taking the time to come here and stand in front of this microphone and speak? And I think I can explain it in very basic terms. We are all proud of the United States, and we're proud of what we stand for and our values. How many times do we repeat over and over that we are a nation of democracy, a nation of people's rights? And those rights are so basic that we start at the First Amendment, the right of speech and press, assembly, petitioning our government, religion. Those are the bedrock of American citizenship. And if we believe them, and don't just say the words, if we believe them, we've said, I think the Supreme Court might have said it originally, but we've said over and over again, you've got to be ready to listen to someone say something that you don't agree with to prove that you believe in free speech. If you have to wait for someone to say exactly what I believe, it isn't really a test. The test of free speech is when someone says something I disagree with, and you say they have a right to do it because they're in America. That's who we are. How many times have we said that over and over again? So I got here a few minutes early for the press conference. Not only met the cameraman, go Bears, but I also had a chance to sit down with Mr. Mahdawi and hear his story firsthand. And I listened to what he said and what he believes, and I thought to myself, I can't believe this. I was one of the first senators, not the only one for sure, that called for a ceasefire after what happened in the Middle East with the attack on Israel. I believe in Israel's right to exist. I have always voted for that purpose. But I also believe that what happened afterwards was not what anyone anticipated. So I called for a ceasefire so that innocent people would not be killed and that we could work out differences in the Middle East in a peaceful manner. At least that was my hope. Mr. Mahdawi basically called for the same thing. He was arrested. He was taken away and deported, at least to a prison situation, which he's now appealed from. And I thought to myself, what was so radical about what he said, calling for peace and for an end to the killing of innocent people? How many of us would join him in that plea? Well, I certainly would, and I don't think anybody's going to arrest me for it. Why are we here? We're here because the Trump administration is afraid of free speech. They're afraid of people who disagree with them. They're going after Mr. Mahdawi today, and who knows who it will be tomorrow. But that is the mark of an administration that is not confident in their own leadership. They don't believe the American people can stand to hear dissent without falling away from them and believing that they're wrong. And so they arrest innocent people like Mr. Mahdawi. I think this is a very fundamental test of whether we believe in free speech in America. If we believe that the clash of ideas is good for a democracy, and I believe that, not violence, but the clash of ideas. And no one has suggested Mr. Mahdawi was engaged in any form of violence whatsoever. So I say to him, you are a test as to whether or not we believe in these constitutional rights. You are a test as to whether or not dissent in America still has a life. That's why we're here today and why we're standing behind you. I wish you the best, and I want to make it clear. He was arrested after appearing at a hearing for your citizenship. Is this correct? He'd just gone through an interview, and they asked him would he uphold the Constitution of the United States, and he said yes, and they came through the door and arrested him. He was aspiring to be a citizen of this country. I hope the day will come when he is. I'd love to count him as a fellow American.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. Now I'd like to introduce Mohsen Mahdawi. Mohsen? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Welch. Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. Thank you, Professor Nadine Johnson. And thank you, Senator Durbin. I am honored to serve in this position, to be on this juncture, where I am representing rights, civil rights in America, and civil rights as well in Palestine. What happened to me is not only a matter that is related to me as a person. I believe that it is a matter that is related to the DNA of this country, the Constitution itself, the First Amendment, that there is a reason why it's called the First Amendment. It's not the Second Amendment, it's not the Third Amendment, it's not the Fifth Amendment. Because the First Amendment that guarantees the right of expression in this country is a pillar of democracy. And because the founding fathers who have faced persecution and suppression knew how important it is. This is the same fact that made me so passionate and motivated me to become a citizen in this country. My name is Mohsen Mahdawi. I was born and raised as a third generation in a Palestinian refugee camp. There I witnessed the horror during the Second Intifada. I saw my best friend getting shot and killed in front of my eyes. I lost my uncle at the age of 11 on my birthday, September 11, 2001, and saw him saturated in blood. I saw people shattered into pieces after an explosion and collected their body parts with my own hands at the age of 12. I was shot when I was 15 years old. I lost many cousins and family members and neighbors. I never knew what is freedom before, but this country that I owe, that I thank, that I feel so much gratitude for, is the same and the first place in my life that provided to me a sense of freedom. The freedom of movement, the freedom of expression, and the freedom of protest. That same passion that I had from childhood to refuse to see any sense of injustice, to refuse to see children in Palestine killed or children in Israel killed, to advocate for justice and peace, for the end of wars, for equal rights, in a similar way that the civil rights in this country has taught me what we should do in a non-violent way, in an empathetic, compassionate way, aligned with my practice, which is a Buddhist practice. That by itself was deemed to be a threat to foreign policy. And in violation of the Constitution, the Secretary of the State deemed me to be deportable. On the day of my citizenship interview, after being here in this country for 12 years, loving my neighbors, connecting with so many communities, working here, paying taxes, and learning, gaining my education in the United States, and never committing a crime, the Secretary of the State deemed my practice of my free speech and First Amendment a crime. And he wanted to punish me. So that day on my citizenship, during my citizenship interview, as Senator Durbin has mentioned, and thank you for remembering the story and for holding it, I was asked by the end of my quiz, the test, would you be willing to protect and defend the Constitution of this country? And I said, of course, yes. And within seconds, ICE agents came in, handcuffed me, and later chained me in my feet, and they threw me in a cell. During that time in prison, Senator Welch came and visited me. And he told me that we stand with you. And I told him I am not afraid, and I am at peace, because first, I didn't do anything that would harm anyone. I didn't commit any crimes. And second, because I believe in the Constitution of this country. And third, because I believe in the checks and balances that were established by the founding fathers of this country. And this Congress is part of the checks and balances. With this, I want to share with you that this is a matter that would affect the DNA of this country, that would affect millions of students who are afraid to say their mind right now on university campuses, that would affect more than 13 million green card holders, that would affect every visa holder in this country, and it will not end here. So I'm grateful for the support. I'm grateful for the deep faith that senators here and many others have continued to give me. I'm grateful for the hope, and I believe in the land of the free. I believe that on the American soil, under the American flag, injustice will not be tolerated, and this must be stopped. I love America. I love my community in America. I love Palestine, and above all, I love humanity. And that's why I am here for, and this is how I defend the Constitution of this country. Thank you.
And we'll close with Nadine Farid Johnson of the Knight Institute. And I just want to express my gratitude to the Knight First Amendment Institute for its stalwart defense of something important to every single American. Nadine.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Senator Welch, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Durbin, and of course to Mohsen for the grace and courage that you model. We are witnessing now the abuse of a one-line provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act to wreak havoc on free speech rights. They started with non-citizen students and faculty. They targeted student newspaper op-ed authors and campus protesters espousing viewpoints they didn't like. They created a chill on campuses across the country, compelling students to feel like they had to hide their views and keep a low profile, constraining faculty from taking visible positions of leadership, participating in conferences, or expanding their scholarship. And that was just the first sweep. Since then, the breadth of the effort to deport or deny entry to foreign persons based on their viewpoints has expanded significantly, and it shows no signs of stopping. The ideological deportation and exclusion provisions of this administration have significant ramifications well beyond the threats to non-citizens currently in or seeking entry to the U.S. They have been accompanied by an explosive growth in a surveillance apparatus that monitors social media accounts, smartphones, and laptops. And it's denying every person in this country their constitutional right to hear, read, and absorb information from and ideas of others. We do not have a bifurcated First Amendment. The rights to expression and association are not only for U.S. citizens. That's why the leadership of Senators Welch and Padilla, Senator Van Hollen and Senator Durbin, and others on the Land with Free Act is so critical and so appreciated. By repealing the foreign policy exception to the Immigration and Nationality Act, Congress will take an important step in reaffirming its commitment to the constitutional rights foundational to our democracy. And the Knight First Amendment Institute is proud to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. I'm glad to take a few questions for any of us. Thank you. Yes? Well, wait, let's get the press first. Okay. You the press?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with the Columbia Spectator. What is your assessment on Republican sentiment towards Land of Free Act? Are you confident Republicans will support this bill? And if not, what would your message to them be?
You know, the real issue with Republicans is how intimidated they are by President Trump. Some of our most stalwart First Amendment defenders have come from the Republican ranks. This is a bipartisan concern. But what I've seen time and again is that when the president decides that he's going to go after Republicans, it inhibits them. So I don't have a prediction on that. Thank you.
Can I read one line from this Reagan?
Yeah.
So I agree with Senator Welch's analysis, but I will read to our colleagues, and I think we all should, the following sentence. What the public officials did in this case was unconstitutional, abhorrent to a society that cherishes free speech. This conduct must never happen again, end quote. That was another statement in the opinion by Judge William Young, a Reagan-appointed federal judge. And so for any Republican senator who cherishes the First Amendment and free speech, they should read this opinion by this Reagan-appointed judge, and we will make sure to circulate it.
I think that's it.
Well, that's it. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Senator, that decision is
Thanks, Dick.